One of the things I hear about people not wanting to get into segmented turning is that it takes too long and it's too hard. And what I would like to do is show you a very easy way that I do the segmented turning, maybe help you get started. First thing that you need to know, there are three types of segmented bowls. This is called a closed segmented bowl. This is one that we're going to be showing in the video. You can see that the edges are all bedded together. And in order to have a good bowl like this, you have to have these joints nice and tight. The second one is what's called an open bowl. Obviously you can see all the holes in this one. And these pieces have to put in on one at a time. We'll show a video on this a little later on. And then the third type is more complicated, and this is called a painted bowl. Different species of wood, different patterns. It's more complex. This is the drawing of the bowl that I showed you here earlier. As you can see, I've still got it attached to the faceplate. I'm not quite done with it. What I do is I go to graph paper, and this is 1/4 inch graph paper. I freehand a drawing that I kind of like. Then I go to a window and I draw the counterpart on it so you can see the whole bowl. These are decisions that you make and you have to make ahead of time. 5 inches diameter. It's going to have a 2-inch base. The rows are 1/4 inch thick, and they're going to be 20 rows, and I'm going to have 16 pieces glued together. I marked 3/4 inch thick sections here. And one of the things that you need to be careful about in doing this is to be sure you've got plenty of space here carving out the inside, or doing the inside. Then you get a pinch mark and you get a gap in here, and it's not going to look very nice. So leave plenty of room here. The lathe is a great tool to take it off with. Then I've counted up here the 20 rows. This first block that I want to do, that I add to the base, which is going to be 1/2 inch thick and 2 inches, I've determined that I want to go 1 3/4 inch block from here to here. That's this length on the stock. You have to cut your stock to 1 3/4. Well, I'm going to make up 2 rows here, 2 sets of blocks, and then after I get this block done, I'm going to cut them into smaller sections. I have found it's almost impossible to glue up little segments that are thinner than this. It just doesn't work unless you do them individually. Or you might want to put 2 of them together. This is called a rub joint, and you glue them like this and then add 2 more and 2 more until you get your 16. But I found that I get a lopsided ring if I do it this way. So the way I'm going to show you is a real easy, convenient way of doing it. My third block is going to be 1.5 inches, and then 1.5 inches, and then 1, 2, 3, there'll be 1.25 inches. Now, the next thing that you have to do is make up a shop order to take it down to your shop. This is what we have here. As you can see, I started here with my rows 1 through 20. I've got my length, which was determined by these blocks that I showed over here, 1 3/4 inches, and then 1.5 inches down to 1.25 inches. The diameter is going to be from this point over to this point. That's going to be, on this first one, 4.5 inches. And then it'll come out up here to 6 inches from here to here. That's where this diameter comes in. Now, here you do have to do a little math. the circumference, that's the distance around here, is equal to 3.1416 times your diameter, 14.137. 5 times that 3.1416 is equal to 15.708, and so on. And 6 times it is 18.850. Now this also happens to be the length of stock that you're going to have in order to make up your row pieces. We'll talk about that in a few minutes. Okay, so now you know what the circumference is. We've already determined we're going to have 16 pieces per row. You divide 16 into the 14.137, and that'll give you 0.884. What that dimension is, it's called the segmented edge length, and that's from this point to this point. What we're trying to do is make up consistent trapezoids like this, where we have when we fit them together, they'll fit together nicely. This is the segmented edge length that you need. We talked about the length of the stock. This is the thickness. This is the 3/4 inch that I'm using. And this is inside diameter. You have to make sure that you have enough inside diameter to be able to cut away on your design. Now, the next thing that you have to know and do is you have to figure out what the angle is to cut this. Now, there's 360 degrees in a circle. We know that we're going to have 16 of these pieces, but there's 2 sides for each piece. So 16 times the 2 is 32. We divide 32 into 360 degrees, and that gives us an angle of 11.25 degrees. And that's all you need to know when you go into the shop. When I do a painted bowl like this, then there are more species, and that has to be taken into consideration. We'll talk about that later. But this is all you need to know in order to make this bowl. The next thing that we do is we go to the shop. I've already started cutting my boards. I'm going to have 7 of these. This will be it's nice to mark them row 3, row 4, 5, row 5, 6, and 7. That way you don't cut this row over here, which wouldn't make any sense. But I like to, after I use the table saw to cut those, I like to make one side curlies. This is the side that I'll always have toward one of the fences. And then I mark a straight line, or a single line, on the other edge. That way, when I cut them, I'll have some reference points. You'll see that in a few minutes. Now, I'd like to tell you there's only one way of doing this, but there's not. I use a table saw. Some people use a bandsaw, and some people use their miter saw. As long as you get good, consistent results, it doesn't matter how you do it. But I found using the table saw and a sled is the best possible way for me to get the most consistent results. This is the type of thing that I want to get nice tight joints through here. And as you can see, I cut that kind of thin. I can cut them very thin. And then what you do is you glue these up individually like this and cut your bowl out of it if you wanted to do a painted bowl. This is my sled that I use. I got in trouble about 4 years ago. I wrote a paper on how to improve the Seg-Easy system. But at that time, we had these plastic wedges. Well, I've looked at mine and decided that I needed to put a notch there and one here, and then put a center line between my two frames, because I could put this in here like this, and that give me a perfect, this is 48 segments, give me a perfect 48, but this side is going to be on the diameter is going to be a lot bigger than this one, and then this one or this one. They're all going to be equal, and you can interchange them, but you're going to have a different way of rings on it. So somebody read my paper apparently, and they've come up with a new wedgie, and we've got 16 sided here like this, and it's 22.5 degrees, so that's the 11 by 11.25. The way I do this now is I come in and I line this up, this point right here with the line, and then I come over here and line it up, loosen this and bring it down here flush right here, and then tighten these down, and then I loosen these and shove this up, so I've got a nice tight fit here on this. That gives me a good consistent results. These two edges have to be parallel, so you have to be careful along that line. So that gives me a consistent wedge. The next thing that I do that you have to be concerned with is what the segmented edge length. This is just a little gadget I've modified to my own use, and I'll show you how I use that. Oh, back on the sled here. This sled, I had plywood all the way across, and as you can see here, I've notched out underneath here. This board is just to keep these sides stabilized. But in order to use my indexing measuring guide, I had to cut these out. So here's how I do this. Now, we're talking about consistency here again. What I do is I bring this line right up here to the bottom of the gullet. That way I'm consistent. Then I bring this over here nice and flush like that. On this first row, the segmented edge length that you'd already calculated needs to be 0.884. So I get this digital caliper out. Okay, 884. I've got this nice and flush here, tight. Loosen this one. And then put your caliper down here like this, tighten it up. Get it nice and tight. And then tighten this one so it's butted up there. So good. That leads me then to the next step where we start cutting the rings. Okay, now I've got my stock all prepared. I've got 7 rows, and each one of these rows, after we get the rings all done, I'm going to cut them into thirds. And that's why, but it's a lot easier to glue them up if you do it this way. So row 1, 2, 3 through 7. So I'm going to go ahead and cut this one. On our shop order, we know that the segmental length has to be 0.884, which I set up on this, as you recall. And check it here with my caliper here one more time. Okay, that's good. I always have this one marked here at the gullet, and I'm going to make all my cuts with my points on this mark right here. We've got this is the primary cut, and this is the complementary cut. So if I've got an error in my angles, that's the way I'll be doing it. Now, just looking at the stock, I see a bad spot on this end, so I'm going to start cutting them from this end. The very first thing I'm going to do is just cut one for my angle. I'm going to have to back that off just a ways. There we go. Okay, that's 8 of them. And we're doing 16. Pencil in my right hand so that I can flip up those pieces out of the road in case I get a jam. I don't want to get my fingers too close. 2, 4, 6, 8. Okay. Let's go ahead and do the glue up on this ring. Before I do the glue up, make sure you do not change positioning here in case you drop one of these or you get a defect. And I'll show you a defect here in a minute. Okay, what I'm doing here is sanding off the fuzz, a little like here on this, and I'm examining the blocks to be sure that the blocks or the trapezoids are good. I was cutting a ring earlier and got to sanding and I noticed this, and that wouldn't be any good. So that's why you don't want to move your settings until you get this all glued up. It'll only take you a few seconds. It's about all the time I'm doing, and I want to be sure that I'm not rounding the edges. That's about all it takes to do the 16. Now, this is what's going to make my system different than what you've seen in the past. I've made this little table out of scrap wood. And I've got a dividing cord here. If you can't figure out how to do this, for $39.95 I can make up this hook and stuff like that. What I do is I run the hook through, grab a hold of my string and pull it through. But you know, this is a real technical skill here. They'll laugh at that, I think, I hope. Okay. Okay, I told you there's a defect. Notice this defect right here. I'm going to have to cut another one. Okay, I'm lining all of these up with the single black mark on top. Okay, remember I had a primary and a complementary? That's what I'm doing here, looking here now. Now at this point, I want to line these things up like this, and I'll bring in my magic little stick and I'll tighten those down. Now I've got a real fancy turning knob here. And I want to check this and make sure I've got a good tight fit. The string has to be just about in the middle of the thing. We just turn this. See how nice that's beginning to look there, and we just tighten this up a little bit. If it doesn't fit before you glue it up, it won't fit after you glue it up. And I want to make sure that this is, but then you go through and kind of feel the edges back here. Make sure the edges are all nice. This is Type Bond original glue. At this point, I don't want to have to do any thinking. I want to get this glue on just as quick as I can. When I'm working with 48 pieces or more, then it takes a little while to do that. All I'm doing is just slathering this on. Keeping that cord up about halfway up. What this does is levels the surfaces, top and bottom. Take a peek down, see what it looks like. One joint was loose. By popping it free like that, I was able to get it tightened up again. Just keep it from moving. Get that tight, nice and tight. Be nice to have a clamp right there, but I don't have one. So let's, there. Just set that aside. Now, when that comes out, this is what we're going to have. It's, we're going to send that through a sander and get this one surface cleaned up. Then I'll take it to the bandsaw and I'm going to slice these rings off. Okay, this is a pile of rings that we did, the 7 rings on it. Some came off here, so I'm going to put a little bead of glue, hot glue. I don't want to, just enough to hold that in place. Okay, now we've got that done. We can come over here to the bandsaw. Okay, this is an Acroslide line sled that I made and have purchased their framework on it. I've taken my boards and I've put these at a 45-degree angle. That way I can come in here and on a consistent basis I can just drop that in the slot. Then what I'll do is I'll come over here, loosen everything up, and bring this in so it just barely, so it touches my bandsaw blade. Now, okay, now what I'm going to do, I'm going to crank this up 6 times. 1 time will be for the blade, and 5 times then will be the thickness. And this will be 0.5 for the 0.05 for the blade, and 5 times 0.05 will be 0.25. So we'll get about 1/4 inch. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Okay. Okay, I'm going to do that for each one of the rings. And you can see that's nice. Look at those joints. They're very nice. Then what I'm going to do is offset them like so. And I'll glue these three up like this, and then I'll mount them to my bottom stock. But I'm going to run these through the sander just real quick, even though that they're pretty good. Okay, one of the things that they showed in our Zoom meeting last month was the use of this Supermax sander. One of the features that I really like about it that was not pointed out that I think is really important is that instead of having to sit there and crank this handle all the time for various heights on it, if you go from a thick stock to a narrow one or vice versa, you bring this over here like that, raise up the level like that, drop it down on your stock, back off a little bit, and you're ready to go. It's that quick. With the jet, you have to stand there and crank for an hour. It's always nice to have since I'm doing just a small ring like this, it's nice to have a push stick just in case. Okay, now you can see how nice they're going to fit there. Nice tight joint. Okay, at this point now I've got all of the blanks cut. What I need to do is go take them through the sander and just make sure that they're all nice and uniform. But notice how nice these joints look on this. That's what we're after. We've got to have nice tight joints. This is about what it looks like on the inside. And what I'm going to do now is, after I sand them, then I'm going to put about 4 rings on, have them glued, and then I'll start doing the interior so I can hollow that out. And then we'll just kind of do just a few rings at a time at this point. Okay, I've got the first 6 rings glued onto the base. So they've been on here now for a couple of hours. I'm going to take these off, and what I want to do now is clean out the center here, make it look nice, because it's going to be harder to get to a little later on. And you guys are all good turners. You're probably better turners than I am. I'm not going to take a lot off the outside here. I just want to get a little bit. Always wear a face mask on this, something like this, because those rings might go flying. Okay, that's about all I'm going to take off on the outside. Here's a little trick Ray showed me. Get started by coming in, doing that kind of a cut. It'll prevent you from losing control of your tool and going out and skating back. That looks pretty daggone good right now. Okay, I think I'm going to stop right now. I might make one more cut. Famous last words. What I do now is I'm going to start gluing these rings on about 3 at a time, and I'll do a little trimming as I go. Okay, I like to chalk the chalk's all gone. I'll get a nice flat surface here. Now, over here on my press, I've got the cumulative there, so we'll take this out. Now, what I'll do here is clean up this inside here, clean up this edge, and just do a little bit of cleaning on here, and then I'll glue these on here like this, and that'll be the final shape. Okay, that's all I'm going to do on the inside, or outside. Now what I need to do is clean up this edge. You can see ridges there. That looks pretty good. So when I put it under the press, it should be all right, I hope. And then we'll come back and finish out the bowl. Okay, I'm not going to, this bowl is all shaped and stuff. I'm not going to cut it off the bottom and do the bottom. You know how to do that. But I just wanted to show you a technique here that I just saw recently that is kind of neat. And it saves a little bit on sanding. What we do is take a scraper, and I got these at Acme, I believe, for $18 a whole series of them. But what you do, and set it at as low speed as possible. Just real fine dust, and it's very smooth. The advantage here now is I'm going to sand this starting at 220, and that's all I have to do. Maybe 320. Now, the next thing I like to do, this is denatured alcohol. It's always nice to clean up your work before you start between sandings. Get a little on the inside here. That's all it takes. Just wipe off your dirt. You can see what that was 240. This is 400. Now you clean it up that last time. Okay, this is my home brewed that I'm going to put on this. It's about 45% denatured alcohol, 45% shellac, and about 10% boiled linseed oil. The linseed oil smooths the finish just a little bit. The shellac gives it the protection, and when the denatured alcohol dries out of this, it'll be hard, the shellac will be hard. Normally I would squirt this on, but apparently it's not squirting today when I wanted it to, so Just wipe a little of this on. Okay, that really feels nice. I'm going to I'll put on maybe 6 or 7 coats like this, and then I'll be done. You can see the shine start to develop now after just the 2 coats. Okay, this is a finished bowl. Came out pretty close to the drawing.